I think in our program we talk about how you really shouldn't do that, or I think that was the consensus, right? In our class, we said, it's the talking head idea. So if you're only trying to say this is the important part, your brain, right, the cognitive, the non-religious, non-spiritual academic thought is what's valued and what's important. And then if you're not thinking about the heart or the body or the environment or really whatever, I mean, not whatever, the all the rest, I suppose, right? um, how do we expect politicians and business leaders and just people in general, after they've completed their formal education, how do they connect the two, right? The brain, the mind, and the heart, right? So that when we talk about environmentalism, and if we're talking about being mindful of some of the other resources that we're depleting, so it's not just about making a profit, but it's about making sure that we're not destroying the environment in the process. I think in terms of secular versus non-secular, we really need to think about how to break down some of those barriers and really start to incorporate. Now, because we've been operating under the separation of the mind and the spirit and the heart, and the rest of it, it's gonna be tough, I think, but and filled with drama and a lot of resistance. Not just because there's change, but I think it's such a loaded topic. I'm sure there will be folks who will be worried that, are we trying to put religion into students' minds, or there could be a lot of different issues. And I think despite the challenges, it's a worthwhile endeavor, and we need to work at it. Um, because at the end of the day, I think contemplation involves a lot of spirituality, whether you choose to frame it in a lens of your religious beliefs and faith systems, or just simply spirituality and you know in non-religious kind of just pure spiritual kind of sense. I think there's a lot of knowledge there. There's a lot of learning that can happen. So, for example, I'm a little bit struggling here because it's even trying to define it myself is a little bit tough. And I think this video medium makes it a little bit easier for you to see where I'm getting at, because you can see me struggling physically trying to talk about it. But so, for example, this past summer we had a class with Dr. Vicky Kelly, and Vicky introduced us to a lot of indigenous Aboriginal ways of teaching, a lot of use of narratives, spirituality, shamanism, with the indigenous people of North America, and there was a different kind of spirituality that I was really exposed to that I haven't really much in my life. And I wouldn't say it was so much religion. I suppose it could be some of the stories and the beliefs of indigenous people, but I felt like it didn't have as much of the baggage, which was kind of liberating. And it was an interesting way to frame various different topics. So again, I don't know if this is making sense, but I'm going to leave it there because there's a lot more to cover. But I think this is a topic that I will continue to think about and struggle with for a long time, because I don't know how to contain it or how to frame it right now. So okay, so at 5:03, he's got a couple comments here. So he says it's thinking, and perhaps it's thinking with awareness. So does contemplation necessarily involve thinking? What if there's just perception or awareness without thinking? So there's a couple other comments that kind of talk about this and on this train of thought that Charles talks about. I, I suppose the definition of contemplation for me is both. So I think there's active thinking that happens when you're contemplating, but also there's that perception and awareness without thinking as well. The perception and awareness without thinking, I feel, is a deeper version of contemplation. But when I'm meditating, and maybe I'm kind of mixing the two up here between contemplation and meditation, but for me it's kind of a bit of both. So when I'm meditating, for example, or when I'm doing some of these activities that I find to be very similar to meditation, I may be driving along and I might be thinking about something, but it's in a very calm and quiet place without judgment, or as much as possible without too much emotion involved, even though I'm aware of the emotions that I'm feeling and the way I'm reacting emotionally to certain thoughts or certain ideas. I'm able to process, and it's a very calm and peaceful way of being, which I think for me is contemplation. And other times, very rare, I hope to get there more often, because it's extremely relaxing, but also tiring, and just not tiring. I think it puts you in a place of peace that I don't know. Sometimes I fall asleep, but it's a good sleep, and other times it's just me, almost like waking up from sleep after a good meditation session where I'm not thinking about anything, and it's about just perception and awareness. And sometimes it's about me almost having an out-of-body experience where I just hold certain thoughts and ideas, and it's almost like I'm observing myself from a couple feet away. So I think it's both for me, and I'm still learning, and I'm still trying to figure it out, but that's where I am right now. He also talks about, you often see the contemplation is defined as involving reflection. Why is this necessarily so? Again, this involves thinking, and I'm challenging the notion that thinking has to be involved. Why not just call this reflective practice? How is contemplation unique? Or is it? Interesting that you mentioned holding your thoughts and really marinating with them. I really like that word. Being there. I'd encourage you to further unpack what marinating involves, this idea of just being there with thoughts. What is that process? Again, is this process unique, or is it really just reflective practice? I think I kind of talked about it in the previous comments, but yeah, I think it's both for me. Reflective practice, it's not just reflection like, okay, I should think about what happened yesterday, or what did I do yesterday, or what was the last Netflix show that I watched before I move on to the next one so that I remember the plot of the show, or it's not that, right? That's not what I'm trying to get at. I think contemplation and reflection are quite intertwined. But when I'm reflecting, when I'm thinking, and when I'm doing these reflective, contemplative, meditation type practices, I'm mindful, and it's unique in the sense that it's different than just simply thinking about what did I watch on the last episode of whatever show that I'm watching. So there's more depth there, and I would say there's a feeling of peace and acceptance, and I think it's more of a mature thought and a deeper thought than something surface level. So I suppose that's how I would define it, but for me I think they're intertwined, and it really depends on the day, and really depends on some of the thoughts and some of the things that I'm working through, and that are part of my life at that time, I think. And then the last comment for this series says, I like that you're really wanting to develop your own understanding and definition. Yeah, and I think I have to. Like, even if we didn't have this assignment, and obviously having this assignment really allowed me to delve into it in a more organized way. But I think it was definitely a big part of my practice, and it was definitely something that I was thinking about consciously, subconsciously, and something that I was creating a working model definition of. And I think same as when people ask about my master's program, there are times when I would be struggling, kind of like right now, to define what it means for me, what this program means for me, what it's doing to me, what kind of changes that are happening within me, but also what is contemplation, what is meditation, what is mindfulness. Maybe there's some personalization where everybody's a little bit different, but also I think it's a very tough thing to just nail down, at least for me. Usually when I'm trying to explain what I do for my master's program, it often involves me blabbering on, kind of like I am right now, but usually with a lot of excitement, a lot of wide-eyed, very excited kind of gibberish that just pours out of me. It just comes out of me. And then people kind of go, okay, like, wow, like that's quite an answer to a question. They just thought, hey, how's your master's going? And oftentimes I'll say something along the lines of, if the purpose of education is to fundamentally change the student, this master's program is mission accomplished. It's doing exactly that. And I can't be, and then oftentimes people would ask, in what way is it changing you? And so many ways, all the ways. It's changing me in all the ways. And it's been interesting. And since while I'm on this kind of thought, I thought maybe I could continue. So I guess I'm kind of weaving in some of the notes that I have here. But I think this program works because a lot of us have undergraduate degrees. We have that K-12 education already under our belt. We've written lots of papers. We've sat through many exams and things like that. The content processing and memorization and understanding concepts we've done over and over. I think this program really allows us to challenge preconceived notions of education. It challenges us to break curriculum in some ways and the norms, to really kind of explore and do new things and try new things. And that's what I'm trying here. And that's exciting. And that's really cool. But while that's happening, it's also allowing me to really re-examine and think about other areas of my life. And again, it's making changes, and I'm making changes in my life in that way. I have a baby that's almost due. He is coming around the end of January. And sometimes, especially in this fall term, as as my wife went into her third trimester, and the baby gets close, I wondered if part of what I'm feeling, at least this term, was also because of the baby and me becoming a dad, and all the mind-blowing things that are involved with that. So it's interesting. But anyways, I think I'm rambling. I'm going to move on. At 6:05, he says, Eureka moments where I really leap forward happens when you interact with others. Very interesting. So is contemplation or contemplative inquiry a relational process for you? Is contemplation by definition relational for you, even if you're just having a conversation with yourself, so to speak? I think even in this video, and I'm already at 32 minutes, yes. So again, I don't normally talk to myself or to a camera. Um, but I suppose I can have an inner monologue where I could have very deep and contemplative thoughts. Um, Generally, it has to be when I'm doing an activity that doesn't require a lot of cognitive resourcing. So, if I'm doing something like, let's say, something new, I don't know, um, maybe you know trying out a new recipe, let's say, and if I'm focused on making sure that I get the steps right and measuring the right amount of this and that and whatnot and timing everything perfectly and so on and so forth, I don't think it leaves me a lot of space, whether mentally or emotionally, for me to really get into that contemplative mode. I've mentioned it in my audio clips that I find that contemplation can happen, again, just sitting and meditating, but also when you're doing repetitive tasks like doing the dishes or driving the car or what have you, or playing sports and getting into that zone. So again, I think it could be an activity that can happen solo, but for me, talking to other people leads to new realizations. Now, I don't know if that's contemplation. That's a good point, because it could be a very cognitive thing where, well, I guess it's not just cognitive, it could be emotional as well, and emotional growth and realization. But when you're connecting with somebody else, you're not talking nonstop, and there are times when you're listening, but other times there's some pauses in between the dialogue, depending on who you talk to.